So great to meet you, Brad. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. So I want to begin our conversation with a question that I've tried to get away from, but it's just too big, which is the pandemic. And 5 years ago,
Mm.
the world was changing in ways that we could never imagine. How did you make it through the pandemic, and how has it changed the way that you live life here in 2025?
Yeah, obviously things became much more virtual, right? Is that we got so used to the way we would dress, we dressed down, we got away from handshakes and all that thing that would bring oxytocin and serotonin to people, that human contact, that human touch. And I think some of that has definitely kind of stayed with us, Joe, in that obviously we're speaking virtually now just out of convenience because I'm not in Kansas City. But I see that in just communication in general, where people still have that skill set that's kind of been stunted, is the inability to shake hands, look people in the eyes, and be able to connect with people. And that's such an important skill. So as far as how I made through it, I would try to talk to people in person as much as possible. I tried to get away from just texting. I've never sent an emoji in my life. I like to actually FaceTime people, call people. I think so much hidden emotion is lost when you don't look people in the eyes and you don't talk to them in real time, kind of like how we are right now. It's You may have had this situation in the past, but if your significant other sends you a text that says "I'm fine" and there's no emoji connected to it, what do you have to go with? Am
Yeah,
I fine? I'm fine. I'm
right.
fine. You don't know where that's going to go. So I think that's what helped me make it through it, was always trying to, whenever I could, stay in person. And the one good thing about being in South Carolina is we didn't have as much of a shutdown. So
Yeah.
we had a little bit more of that in-person communication.
I remember when I was a communications major in college, like 70% of our communication habits, if not 80, is nonverbal. And it's just like you said, you can't read a situation. Like there's times where people want to text through things that are going on. It's like, I'm just going to pick up the phone. I'm not, let's just get
Yeah.
to it, you know? And
And it definitely has caused problems. Not just, I mean, you see it with my former agency with the Secret Service, in the situation that happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, with Trump. Is instead of getting on the radio and making phone calls, a lot of the breakdown in that situation was people were engaging in text strings and group texts instead of picking up the radio, picking up the phone, and speaking with someone. Is that that we've lost that ability to just speak to another human being? And you're in jazz, you're used to improving, right?
yeah,
Is that so much of communication is improving, and we don't do that anymore. I'm going to send Joe a text. Joe gets a text. Joe reads a text. Joe thinks, how should I respond to this text? So it's we've lost that. It's asynchronous communication now. So the ability to kind of be in the moment is something that we've definitely lost. So that's something that we need to get back to for sure.
well, but the irony of that time was we were so connected. If this would have happened in
Mm.
85, we would have had none of
Oh,
these tools to keep us connected, but it still made us feel more human. And after the fact, we all wanted to be together. I know when I didn't get a chance to go see live shows, it was a whole different thing to see it virtual. It just didn't feel right. I don't think I even watched many virtual shows, but when I finally got back into a room and felt that energy and the particles and everything change, and
right.
that feeling, it's like it gets you back to the roots of who we are, and maybe we all figured out the meaning of
Yeah.
life.
No, I think that's an interesting point. You bring that to me, Joe, because I think the analogy I like to give when it comes to communication, because you kind of broke down some of the numbers, is it's like the old group Milli Vanilli. And I may be dating myself. I don't know if I'm dating you, but if you're
No.
familiar with Milli Vanilli,
Yes.
is I went to their concert in 1989, right? Like
Yeah.
I before the scandal, and it goes to show that the words were terrible, the lyrics were terrible, the soundtrack was pretty terrible, kind of poppy,
Yeah.
right? But the music video, if you want to use that as an analogy, was amazing. You had
Hmm.
two models that were dancing and all that strung together. When people realized that they weren't actually the real people singing the music, no one went to the real people singing the music and said, "Oh, well, we want to follow them now." Is that so much of it is stagecraft? Like look at Pearl Jam. How many people can look at Pearl Jam and tell me what the lyrics to each song is, right?
Right. Yeah.
You don't know what Eddie Vedder is saying,
Yeah.
but it's an amazing riff. The way he puts things together, it's all in that the music video, if you want to use that analogy, bringing our body language into the equation.
It's funny you mentioned Pearl Jam. I worked at a YMCA years and years ago. I ran a couple labs in the inner city, and my partner was a former football player for Oklahoma. and he was a bodyguard for them. They went to Mexico City, and he was talking to me about how deep Eddie was and how he always had a journal with him and just how they constructed and did their thing. And it's interesting because it really didn't matter if it was a bunch of because I remember Letterman used to give him all kinds of flack and he'd get
Yes.
upset about it. But it's still that emotive feeling that you get because one of the reasons why I like jazz is I can do without the lyrics. It's that feeling, it's that washing over of kind of blue over my soul. It just makes me feel like
Yes.
everything's okay here on the planet.
Yes, no, absolutely. And, my Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor, he came to the United States at, I don't know, 18, 19, and spoke no English,
Yeah.
Portuguese completely. His favorite band growing up was Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, explain that to me. He doesn't
Yeah.
speak the language, right?
Yeah.
But when he would see Flea going crazy on the bass, and, and Chad Smith on the drums and Anthony Kiedis, singing, it brought that energy, right? So like, yeah, you don't have lyrics behind a horn or a piano or a bass, but there's something deeper with that, and the way people play it, you appreciate the art and you kind of get in the moment, I guess.
Yeah, you certainly do. So let's get into exactly what you do right now in 2025. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
put you in front of a bunch of kids, 12-year-olds, career day. The curious kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
I sell jail, right?
Yeah.
That's what I've done for 25 years is I protect people and I sell jail. And when I say sell jail is a lot of times I talk to people that have done bad things, and it's up to me to get them in the right headspace, to decide that they want to maybe disclose something against self-interest and that's sometimes hard to do when you're talking to a child molester, when you're talking to a murderer. So trying to determine if people are being truthful, I guess, if you wanted to boil that down to a second grade level, most people can understand lies and they know that they're wrong. So trying to determine, are you lying to me? And then trying to get you to explain to me why you chose to lie. That's what I did for 25 years.
So I'm curious, what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream gig?
Yeah, I want to be a cop and
Okay.
I want to be a detective. I grew up, once again, dating myself. I had the old green machine and the old Huffy bikes, and, I had the chips, John Poncherello and, John Baker. I had the little siren on my little Huffy bike, and I wanted to go catch the bad guy. So I was blessed to, do that. And my best friend for the last 35 years, he actually lives in Kansas City. He's deaf. And I learned that communication is so important, and how to communicate and how you have to enunciate words and how you have to use body language to get someone to understand you, and how you have to be present during that conversation to understand them. And, kind of circling back to, with COVID, the lack of eye contact, we just spew what we're going to say and they spew what we're going to say. And we just engage in this transactional talk nowadays instead of really getting, in the moment.
I watch sporting events with the volume off, and I can
Mm-hmm.
totally tell what they're saying. I can totally tell how they're feeling. I feel the picture. It's wild how that works. Like what you're saying, your friend who's deaf, how they have to key in and feel things. Like there's a musician, his name is Matthew Whitaker, and he's blind, and his acumen and the way he embraces the music and does it, it's like it's out of sight, man. It's like something that is almost extrasensory because he's had to like work in a different
Yeah.
way to figure
Yeah.
this world out.
Yeah, one sense degrades and the other one improves. Like
Huh?
that's the always thing I said about my friend Doug was his ability to read hidden emotion was unparalleled because he had to. He did it 24/7. Emojis were a godsend to him. Smartphones were a godsend to him because now he can text people. So he's kind of lost some of that skill set. But, as a society, we've went from Shakespeare back to cave paintings and hieroglyphics with how we communicate.
Yeah, we
We just
certainly have.
everything's shorthand and quickly sent. So, but that's it. I think there's a lot of parallels in what you appreciate as far as jazz and what I appreciate in communication. Because one of the things I'll do when I'm teaching people how to do effective elicitation or interrogation is I'll give them words of the day. I'll give them song lyrics that they have to get into that interaction, and it really forces them to go to right brain and kind of get off of that sheet of music that
Yep.
they had a game plan on, right? They have to start riffing. And when people do that, they realize that they can do that. It's kind of like improv. I did improv for many years, and I thought it really helped open up my communication ability because I didn't get stuck to the 25,000 words in my brain and trying to, focus on just that. I tried to put everything together. So much, if you watch Whose Line it is anyway,
Yeah.
so much of it is not what they say, it's how they react to it. They
Uh-huh.
sell it. They
Yeah,
sell the funny with their body language and with their reactions. And so I think body language is something that people, and improv, I think, is something that could really help people in their communication journey.
for sure. So on Sunday there was a band called the Headhunters that came to town. Herbie Hancock set it up in '73, and they kind of took off. And I moderated a Q&A. They came to town for a few days, and Donald Harrison was next to me, and he's the guy that taught John Batiste, Notorious B.I.G., and all these other musicians, but he taught them all genres. And at one point, he was explaining that music, when you really feel it, it's like heaven. I've never heard anything explained this way. And I'm just like, dude, you nailed it. Like, I got his acumen and his skill of teaching other musicians. And it's interesting because you mentioned let
Mm-hmm.
people kind of float into this other world, and it completely takes you away from that left brain blueprint.
Yeah, and it's the same way in a lot of different sports. Like when kids play, they learn so much better.
Yeah.
At an early age, kids make up games, right? They go right brain. If you didn't have an Xbox that they were stuck to, we used to go out and just you would play, you would make up games. And with my jujitsu instructor, he will talk a lot about that as well. Is like, hey, I'm going to show you the move, but I want to just get you in a similar position and I want you to flow to, hey, if you get to that move, so be it. But maybe you get to something else. Is that it's once again the best jujitsu practitioners are people that don't have a dedicated game plan. They just sit there and they go out and they see what presents itself and then they react to that.
Yeah. Like I even think about Michael Jordan when I watch The Last Dance. Like
Mm-hmm.
watching him do what he did was a level of poetry and athleticism that was off the charts. He had to have had this uncanny mental ability to literally get in that safe space of just doing it because every game
Yeah.
he
Yep.
did it, you
Well, and
know?
you got a great other one in another sport there in your city with Mahomes, right?
Man.
Is his ability to, okay, I've got a scripted play, but the safety did this, the cornerback did that, the defensive end did this, and I'm going to react according to that, and I'm going to use one arm to get Kelsey to do this and another arm to do that, and then I'm going to change my arm angle. So some of those are attributes that are amazing physical attributes, and some of that is just the ability to truly improv
Yeah.
and audible in the moment.
Last year, I went to the last day training camp, which I had no idea was one of the most relaxed days. And I'm sitting there and I'm just watching Mahomes. I'm like 50 feet from him, like, this is the most popular athlete on the planet. And I just honed in, had my camera, and I'm watching him. And if you could have had an aerial and watched him, he was interacting with everybody, hot
Yeah.
dogging, flipping the football, throwing the ball to like even the guys out there that were just working the field that weren't even players. And
Yeah.
he just interacted and did all these things, but it was subconscious, but it was meditated. And I think that's his key. He is this glue, and they all know that Mahomes is the guy in the room that you want with you. He's the first
Oh,
guy that you pick on the kickball team.
100%. And he's the person that they're gonna die for, right? Because
Yeah,
of that. He
yeah,
doesn't have that attitude and that that I'm holier than thou
yeah.
mentality. So that's awesome that you got to see that though,
Oh, it's
behind the
wild.
scenes.
Just to hone in on it. So let me ask you this. When did you realize that interrogation and doing high level things like protecting human beings, that this was going to be your calling in life?
Yeah, so I went to grad school for criminology and I thought, you know what, man, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to study why crime happens. St. Louis has obviously been plagued, as Kansas City is, from a per capita standpoint, with a lot of criminal activity. You saw a lot of manufacturing in the 50s, 60s, 70s move out of these cities, and they left, as you know, a lot of issues criminally. So, but during grad school, I did an internship with the Secret Service, and I was like, wow, these men and women are amazing. They're just great, high, morally sound people that will go out of the way to help each other, and they get to see the world. And I was blessed that when President Clinton came in while I was doing the internship, I got to meet President Clinton. But it was amazing to meet him. But I was fallen for the counter assault team and the counter sniper team and the presidential protective team. I was like, wow, this would be amazing, right? So that was when I knew, man, this is something I definitely want to do. So I just made that kind of my journey over those next 3 to 5 years to say, what can I do to put myself in a position to do that? And I was blessed to get the position. Started in Chicago, St. Louis, former President Bush, and then 17 years in the polygraph program.
So I would imagine in that position, just like we talked about with Mahomes, you at the end of the day, you're a human being and you get
Mm-hmm.
attached to things. How did you make that separation between this is a job that's a part of my duty to protect them, but I also really like this human? How do you
Yeah.
psychologically split that and be effective as not only nurturing your soul, but doing your job well?
Well, it's never if you like them. It's more of a bigger part if maybe you don't like them. And that's one thing that the Secret Service really tries to avoid is that we try to stay apolitical in that I've taken care of the Prime Minister of Israel, I've taken care of the President of Iran, most of the US presidents that are on both sides of the political aisle. So we really try to avoid that. But you can't help, especially in my former detail with H.W. Bush. I just spent 4 years with him, living in Houston, summer in Maine. And on a former detail, my career was more like dating myself again, but guarding tests versus in the line of fire. I had more of a laid back former president vibe, and you get to know them a little bit. He was a big boater, so I was always on the water and a rescue swimmer. So you get to know them, and they were just amazing people. I mean, you got a war hero that was shot down in World War II, survived, basically become a House of Representative, a vice president, head of the CIA. The guy did everything before he became president. So you just truly respect that. And, you would do anything for that person. But I would like to think that all my coworkers would do anything for any of the protectees, that you truly view yourself as like a Praetorian guard. I mean, you've taken that oath that, it doesn't matter their political leanings. I'm here to support the office of the presidency or any of our protectees, because every September we'll have 170 foreign heads of state come in and we protect all of them. And you see, I think it's great because you get to interact with all these different cultures, but some of them may be not politically aligned with where the United States is at. But our goal is to keep them safe, and keep them well and leave them just the same way they were when they came into our country. So I think that teaches you a lot about just humanity in general. And that
Yeah.
when I'm talking to a child molester and I'm talking to a murderer, I think protecting people of all political stripes allowed me to stay grounded and not furrow my brow and not show contempt. Because, Joe, you hear the word murder, you hear the word pedophile. So many people are like, I wish I could get my hands on that person.
Yeah.
And that's not how I can react. I have to talk to them just like I'm talking to you right now. So being able to separate that is an important thing to do.
Well, but the thing too about all these dignitaries and politicians is that they all hum at a different level, no matter what side of the aisle they're on.
Mm-hmm.
You already come in with a very clear focus of who you are and a high moral compass, but then you get in with these individuals that are where they're at for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and they
Yep.
hum at a high level. All of that collective energy and all of that achievement has to, by osmosis, affect the way that you see life and the way that you evolve as a human.
Yeah, I think if I'm getting where you're coming from, is that the hard part is sometimes like, and I know I saw this as a when my first protective detail, I was on W. Bush when he was running as governor in 2000, and so you'd go out for 3 weeks, and it was intense. You'd be in 3 or 4 cities a day. You'd be jumping on the 727, get off into the limos. All traffic was controlled. You'd go to this city. You'd see 18,000 people, that want to touch him and shake hands with him and all this. And so, yeah, some of that would kind of wear on you. And you'd quickly realize, and the Secret Service has a way of doing this, of being like, hey, you were a fly on the wall. You were just part of the show. You are not the show. Right. And that, after that initial, like, wow, this is awesome. You've usually got some good supervisors and mentors there to be like, hey, once again, if we make news, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's never a good thing if we make the news.
Yeah.
So trying to just realize this is a 40, 50, 60 hour a week job, and staying grounded can be difficult with some of the things that you see. I mean, you're at the Olympics, you're at the pinnacle, wherever the president's at, we've got personnel at. So sometimes, once again, is that sometimes people start to go astray and think that they're part of the process, and you're not.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, of being around such high profile things throughout all these years, who was a person that you always look forward to running into? I mean, at the end of the day, we're humans. It's that whole idea of like saddling up next to somebody in a diner
Mm-hmm.
for a cup of
Yep. Yep.
coffee. Who did you look forward to running into?
Wow. So obviously, just with my time with H.W. Bush, uh, when you would see him well up in tears, talking about holding on to the stick of his dive bomber when he was shot down, hoping that his navigator and bombardier could get out. and then climbing out on the window when it was on fire and jumping out and floating in the water for an hour before the USS Finback picked him up, and crying, wondering if he'd have held on for another 5 seconds, if he could have saved their life. You just see the true humanity of someone that cares and got involved in public service for that reason. Like when you see somebody that when he talks and says, in the 1992 election, hey, I did the no new taxes thing and I don't regret it because it was a good deal for the American people.
Yeah.
When he would talk about with his biographer about, hey, I didn't go, when the wall came down, I didn't go celebrate that because I knew that would put Gorbachev in a rough situation. Like, you respect that
Yeah.
because, he would go across the aisle. He worked with Clinton for tsunami relief. So it was one of those things where I don't want to say he's the last true. I mean, he was a Republican, but I think he worked with both sides, and we just don't have that in our echo chambers nowadays. So from that standpoint, that was somebody that I always truly respected. I will say, when you shake Bill Clinton's hand, it's impressive. He
I,
looks right through you. Yeah,
I saw him speak at the Truman Library in '04. It was one of the most magnetic things I've ever seen.
yeah,
When he came through, it was like, when they opened the State of the Union
yeah,
and it just the chlorides in the room change. I still remember all of the things he was talking about, solar panels on skyscrapers in Brooklyn and how we could
yeah, yeah.
conserve like all of those things and just the way he could interact was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it would be amazing where he would shake someone's hand and he hadn't met him. He maybe met him twice 20 years ago, and he'd remember their wife. He'd remember their kids' names. I mean, he was operating on a different level. But I'll be honest with you, like these world leaders from these small countries, Kiribati was my last one I was a detail leader on, and they come from a 50,000 person country in the middle of Micronesia, and they come to the United States, and they are just people,
Yep.
and they are great people. And by and large, every protectee that I've worked cared about us getting fed, us being taken care of, us. They literally put that into their thought process, and we appreciate that, right? Because we got lives as well. And I know both the Bushes wouldn't travel on Christmas because they wanted the agents to be able to be home with their families as much as possible. So we truly appreciated that. But I really have not, and this is not me just saying this, I've not had bad experiences with any of our protectees. I mean, the president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, when he came in, was very charismatic. His protective detail, unbelievably professional. So these are people that maybe don't politically align with U.S. interests, but really, really good people.
So at the end of the day, of all of these from between the dignitaries and the geography and all of the evolution that you've gone through as a human being, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I would say cases of crimes against children. So, when we talk protection, these are people that heads of state, they get protection 24/7. If they have a heart issue, if they have somebody trying to hurt them, we've got people that are dedicated to protecting them. Kids can't choose the situation they were born into. And since 1994, the Secret Service was congressionally mandated to provide support to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. And since that time, my former agency had done over 8,000 polygraphs on cases involving physical and sexual abuse of children. And for me, working those cases, working child sexual abuse material cases, and trying to get justice to these, unnamed victims, uh, I feel I'm most proud about it. It comes with a price
Yeah.
because when you have to go to some dark places with pedophiles and talk to them and try to get them to rationalize, minimize, and project their behaviors, you have to go to some dark places, and that leaves, scars on your brain. But the hundreds of child molesters we've been able to talk to and put behind bars, definitely to me is my life's work.
So we all have this image of the Secret Service. We all have this image of the
Mm-hmm.
protectors around dignitaries. But all of you are human beings. All of you have families. All of you have interests. There's this lineage from your youth all the way up to where you are now. So at the end of the day, everyone has this perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm somebody that I truly believe I did the right thing when nobody was looking. I think I made the right choices. I think we talk in jujitsu about mastering what matters most. And, I think what I was hopefully able to do was matter what matters most and not get caught up in the minutia and the small things in life. And for me, it was keeping that work life balance. not chasing the carrot, not going for promotion. Sometimes when you get promoted, you can't work the cases that you want to work. And I wanted to be in the room talking to bad guys and vindicating the innocent. There's a lot of people that we've talked to that didn't do the thing that they were accused of. And that's some of my proudest moments as well, is coming in and clarifying a situation and vindicating somebody that has been falsely accused. So being in those moments in time and mattering what matters most and being a man of integrity and supporting that last name that my father gave me, and that hopefully my son keeps alive, is something that I'm most proud of.
You know, being over 50 now, you naturally have this idea that the sun's setting, you feel mortality in a different way. Like there's a part of me sometimes that feels this pang of I really enjoy being here. And I know that one day inevitably all of this comes to an end. And I say that for this. You were in the line of fire all the time. How much did the wave of mortality come through your brain, or did you have to take that minutia and put it in the back and just realize you're doing a job and you're going to make it to the end of the day?
Yeah, so I'm blessed, in the Secret Service. I mean, granted, things happen, knock on wood, but we are so much more insulated from day to day criminality than local police officers are. Right, and right now in the streets of Kansas City, Columbia, South Carolina, where we're talking from, the men and women that are going on a domestic violence call or going on a search warrant have much more uh, problematic things that they have to deal with than what I did. I was usually in a sanitized environment, meaning
Yeah.
we had locals, we had state, we had other agents, and then we were kind of in the inner perimeter on a protective standpoint. And when I'm interviewing a bad guy, he's been searched, he's in a controlled environment. I have people watching.
Yeah.
So I'm blessed in that regard, right? Is that I do get that question a lot, and I always turn that back to the men and women that are on the outer perimeter, the men and women that bring the bad guys to me are much more in danger than I ever was.
So I'm going to tap into your adventurous soul. I'm going to ask you this. If we get off this call, time machine pulls up, you can go anywhere in the history of time and see one event with your own eyes. You won't create a tear in time. You just get to watch it
Mm.
happen. What would you love to have seen with your own eyes?
Wow, that is a great question. I can tell that creative mind, that jazz mind, Joe, is coming out here, right?
Yes.
Because that's a riff into another. That's a
That
complete,
that's the
complete.
beginning of the Big Bang Theory, and all of those events are just flying
Yeah,
at
that's a
you.
complete left turn. I would say if you go back in history, and I would look, I would want to go back to maybe Valley Forge
Yeah.
and see George Washington, right? And try to motivate these men in this situation, these patriots that are not getting paid, not getting fed, under disease, that how he could rally them up and get them to say, hey, we're going to cross this river at night to take on the Hessians, right? To me, that would be an amazing case study in leadership in American history.
So if anybody wants to reach out, they want to learn more questions, any of the good business in your world, where's the best place for anybody to go?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Joe. BradleyBeeler.com. My Instagram and LinkedIn handles are Brad Beeler 1865. So that's the year the Secret Service was founded. And then on my website, it's also got a book I got coming out in February called Tell Me Everything, that is about hopefully allowing people to learn how to communicate better.
And and I can put that link in the show notes. Okay, cool. I will make
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will make sure
No,
to
I
get all
really
of that.
appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, this has been absolutely refreshing. Thank you not only for taking time out today
Mhm.
to open up your story, but for your service to the country and what you're doing.
Thank you,
I
Joe.
have a deep amount of respect, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful interview. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.